Wes is out of the country, so we had to bring in big hitter, the OG, my original co-host on Just Basketball, Brendon Kleen, the Phoenix Suns. We're going to talk about them in depth today, plus a little McClung as the dunk contest savior, ? That's coming up today on the Just Basketball Show. Let's go.
A spectacular move by Michael Jordan. LeBron James with no regard for human life.
What is up, everyone? Chris Manning here, and special guest Brendon Kleen, Locked On Suns, awful announcing. Check him out on those places. Find him on your social media platform of choice. Letterbox if you're a real one like me. Brendon, what's the last thing you logged on Letterbox off the top of your head?
Oh, God. I watched Let's Start a Cult, the Stavros movie, and it kind of sucked. It was pretty terrible.
That's tough.
I mean, salute to people who finance their own movies and just like to try stuff with their friends. I mean, who among us can't respect that? But could have been better. Final product could have been a little better.
Yeah, Stavros having a moment on like the dirtbag left internet as well as being like the reasonable guy on a Theo Von podcast. So good run from Stavros. Would recommend Flow as my last log if you have not seen.
Okay. Very
Flow
different energy.
Yeah,
Animated
not a cat guy,
versus
not a cat guy
older,
even, but there's a great golden retriever in Flow. Yeah, it's very different energy, but would recommend Flow. Before we get into the Suns today, McClung, got to tell you that we're powered by our friends at BetMGM. If you haven't signed for BetMGM yet, use bonus code JustBasketball, and you get up to a $1,500 first bet offer on your first wager with BetMGM. So here is how that works. Step 1, download the BetMGM Sportsbook app on iOS or Android and sign up using code JustBasketball. Step 2, deposit at least $10 and place your first wager in any game. Step 3, you get up to $1,500 back in bonus bets if the bet loses. Use our bonus code JustBasketball, all one word, when you sign up. Gambling problem, call 1-800-GAMBLER. Must be 21 or older to wager. Terms and conditions apply. Brendon, start with McClung. We're recording this before the actual All-Star game, so if the format changes worked or there's anything notable that happens, odds are probably not going to make a big difference, was my hunch in our scheduling here. I'll do something on that. I don't think we're getting there. It feels like to me, Brendon, the biggest win of All-Star Weekend for the NBA is the fact that not only did McClung win, it's not really that McClung won, but if he's going to coax Ja Morant and Giannis, who tweeted that they X'd whatever we're using, that they'd be willing to do it next year. Ja saying, I might have to dunk. Giannis saying, if you do it, I'll do it. Ja also calling out Aaron Gordon and Zach LaVine. If the NBA can find a way in LA next year to get McClung versus a cadre of some superstars, some all-star level guys, just some notable dunkers of the last several years, that feels like the biggest win they could get for All-Star Weekend. Do I believe it actually happens? Probably not. But if McClung pulls that off by enticing people with 3 straight wins and the dunks he had on Saturday, that feels like the NBA should just cut him like a $5 million check under the table.
Or give him a contract. That would be probably a good first.
It's like, hey,
for somebody in the NBA.
Wizards, can you just sign McClung for us for 3 years?
Yeah.
Do us a solid.
There's 2 questions, right? One is, would Ja or Giannis or anyone else of that caliber keep this energy 10 or 11 months from now when they actually need to commit? The other question is, would they beat McClung? Because this is sort of the whole thing, I guess, that made these guys stop wanting to participate in the dunk contest originally, right? Was this idea that they could get beaten by a McClung or a Nate Robinson or a Jamario Moon or whatever the hell else example you want to throw out there. So, I would like to believe that Ja would put on a pretty good show, but if he loses, then we're kind of just back to square one. It's almost like McClung just needs to retire, and those dudes need to kind of one-up him from afar, and there'll be some YouTube splices where was this McClung dunk better than this Ja Morant dunk, but we don't actually have to have the judges score it, because then I'm worried that we would just go back to G Leaguers in 2027 when this thing happened again. So I kind of wanted to just be Ja versus Giannis and leave the rest behind, and then maybe, hey, if Ja wins, okay, then Ja's back next year. Who's going to take the crown? And whatever. But I think Mac scares me. Mac is a real threat here to ruin this all over again.
100% is whatever money we can get to make this happen, I think is maybe the answer. The SportsCenter Instagram account had a post up that pointed out that Mac McClung has made more money on winning dunk contests than he has as a professional player. That is astounding.
How much does he win?
He's won $312,000 since he's won the last 3. So it's like $100,000 or so, give or take.
That's more than he's made as a player.
The graphic said he made like $130,000. G League salaries are not that high. If you're on a straight
we gotta
G League
do something about the G League. I didn't realize they were scraping like
great.
that. Come on.
Yeah, we're removed from the days of 10 years ago when it's you got your rent covered and access to a car and $20,000 in a house in Canton, Ohio. But it's still not a real wage for these teams that are worth.
I live 5 minutes from the Suns G League facility or their G League arena, and now I'm kind of expecting that I'm going to be walking the dog and see one of these dudes out here.
Yeah.
If that's the kind of, salary they're working with.
Yeah, 100% possible. I mean, I was going to inadvertently dox a Cavs player who played on a two-way last year who lives very near me, and it's it's because you're making G League money most of the time. Good on your accountant for getting you an affordable apartment, I guess.
Yeah.
But if you look back at the list of the last dunk contest winners, it's McClung, Obi Toppin, Anthony Simons, Derek Jones Jr., Hamidou Diallo, remember him? And then Donovan Mitchell in 2018 is the last all-star level guy to have won one of these. I think not only is it, Brendon, that you don't want to take the L on a public stage when you're that worried about your brand, but there's no financial incentive for these guys. There just isn't. I know guys, superstars in the 90s and stuff, and Kobe Bryant and whatnot made more money than their peers at the time, but it wasn't the money that guys have access to now, where Donovan Mitchell's making $50 million a year. The best players in the league, Giannis, are making $60 million a year. Jazz is making tons of money on top of a Nike deal. They don't have not only is there a reputational risk, but there's no financial upside. It's what's in under $100,000 that's getting taxed a 40-something% rate to you when you're already making $50 million. Mac McClung, it's kind of grinded to here to some degree. It's aspiring to change his financial income bracket for the year. No other star needs to do that. You need you really probably need them to throw money in a bigger cash pool almost to make this worth their while. I can't think of any other solution other than, hey, if you win this, you get $5 million or something absurd.
We need to get Mr. Beast involved, I think is what you're saying here. He seems
that
to be the guy
season,
that has the hookup on the giveaways of that caliber. My issue with that, I mean, one, I don't think you're wrong in terms of trying to war game out what it's going to take to get these guys out here, but I just sort of refuse to accept that their time is that valuable. This thing takes 45 minutes? Get on the damn court. Is it really that, much of a pull for you to go do some dunks? But at the same time, I don't know. In a world where I just saw Amy Poehler got a new podcast, and I can't imagine that that's exactly raining dough upon her. I just, I mean, not even Amy Poehler, but Paul George even, who is an NBA player who could do the dunk contest. I mean, how much is Wave
I think Paul George. Paul George might be a bad example considering he looks like he's been coming out. He came out of the crypt to play this season. It does not look good. For, that's
not a good idea. Maybe to waste his hops on the Saturday night of the All-Star weekend. But you get my point. These guys are not exactly needing to be convinced with money to do every single thing they're doing. So. You don't want to have me back on this show and complain about the All-Star game again.
I do.
But
Brendon, this is why I brought you. This is the energy, Brendon. This is you and I being a little cranky is one of the things that maybe this is the mood. This is the reality.
The incentive should be that the league's health should matter, right? So
players don't feel invested in the league's health.
Yeah, that should be enough. That should be I want to put on a show. This is fun. It's cool. And kids like this, adults like this, the arena that I'm in, crowd here in this city likes this. I'm not saying LeBron has to do it every year or something, but yeah, I think there's that sweet spot. Jordan did it early on. Kobe did it early on. Nobody. Yeah, Paul George is a bad example, but I don't know. Probably Giannis shouldn't even be doing it. Yeah, Blake Griffin. But I don't know. What's a perfect Ant, right? Ant right now.
Ant's
That's kind of the guy.
Ant and Ja would be the two that I think would be like really the move. I'll just say that if we ever want to kick off the next CBA crisis like way early, I need like Giannis to be like, I'll do the dunk contest, but only if we go to 65 games. Like I need time for my body to recover and lower my injury risk. Let's go to 65 games. I'll do the dunk contest.
It's called leverage, baby.
Let's go. Let's get it art of the deal. Next NBA CBA negotiation. Brett, I hate to do this to you, but we got to transition to the Suns. This has been from afar. It gives me hives. It gives me stress on behalf of Suns fans and youth having to think about this team all the time because it reminds me a lot of some of the way that the later LeBron Cleveland stuff got talked about. It was like this is just a matter of time before it blows up. Everyone feels like you're just kind of rooting for your downfall, that it just feels like the implosion and the doom cycle is just ever present. That's what it has felt like from afar. They're 26 and 28. They're 11th in the West. If the season ended right now, they'd be out of the play-in. They did not ultimately make the Jimmy Butler trade. Bradley Beal's still on the roster. The whole Durant thing, which we'll get into, did not happen, but that story doesn't seem like it's done. When you look at how this season has gone, where did this outcome for them so far fall in your range of outcomes, your expected outcomes for this Suns team this year?
I didn't think they would be worse than last year, so that's a surprise. You know, you always hear with these big three teams, like, whatever happens year one, year two is always going to be better because you have to make the big moves at the deadline or in the offseason. You're kind of thinned out. You don't have the time to see what you need and address those holes, and then year two is when it happens. They were better than I think people maybe even remember last season because of all the injuries and the, even then, like, expectations versus reality, where they ended up being a 49-win team. They got the 6th seed. They were pretty close to being top 10 in both offense and defense. I believe they were the 9th offense and the 12th defense. It was a popular pick to think that they could upset Minnesota in the playoffs. And then ever since it's been downhill, of course, with the sweep and then this season, which we can dive into. But, like, I would have thought, okay, you get a couple different point guard options. You get a better, backup center, and you're reliant less on, like, these random young guy role players that you're kind of counting on to hit the jackpot on. And you're more of a veteran, know what you're doing type of team. That was clearly the focus over the offseason, and then you just have more time and chemistry with the best guys. And a new coach on top of that, which I wasn't even positive they really needed to do, but they clearly got an upgrade in terms of reputation going from Frank Vogel to Mike Budenholzer.
And I would say style, right? Like, I think if you're going to say is Vogel or Budenholzer, if everything else is equal in what they believe in basketball should be, if does one of these fit Kevin Durant and Devin Booker better, it's Budenholzer 10 times out of 10. So even that, yeah, there's some optimism there to have.
Yes, I would have thought that before, but, like, I think that's part of why this season, the number one kind of thing you have to circle of why this season has fallen short and wasn't something I would have ever predicted is because they're 27th in defense.
Yeah,
like,
it's bad.
The conversation just doesn't have to go much further than that when you're talking about what's going wrong this year. You cannot be a bottom 4 defense in the NBA and have anyone talk about you as anything more than exactly where they are now at 11th in the West. Like, that's right. That's exactly, like, the target has hit the center of the dartboard. Like, that is exactly what you are if you're 27th in defense, is you're hovering around 500 or worse. And so, like, the Bud thing is, I think, just another example of the panicky way that they've built this roster out, and one of those things in hindsight where I want to believe that it was the right move. I mean, I think Bud is a better, like, program builder type guy, but maybe it was the right move to just say, get a high floor defensive coach and let the stars kind of do their thing on offense. I mean, the results did speak for themselves. Something didn't quite go right this year that did go right last year. And again, you kind of have to look at the defense.
The defense part with Bud, I think, is interesting too, because I think you could then kind of it's hard to do this, right? But it made me retroactively think about him differently as a defensive coach in Atlanta and then in Milwaukee. Had really good success in both situations. But you go look at the rosters that he had. Atlanta, it's okay. He had Al Horford, one of the smartest, most capable defensive players we've had in the league the last 15 years.
Prime
Still
Al Horford,
Lynch
too.
Exactly. Prime Al Horford with prime Millsap, with Damari Carroll as a good wing defender, and just like a good team structure, even if that team couldn't break through the LeBron era Cavs. Goes to Milwaukee. Not only does he have Giannis, who is one of the best defensive players alive, but he had Brook Lopez as a defensive anchor. He had Drew Holiday, who is still just an absolute defensive menace. Like, he had personnel at the highest end that could supplement a defensive structure, that could probably replace something of a clear benchmark. 'Cause that does not exist in Phoenix, particularly at center. And I think about like the Nurkic part of this. Whatever, none of us, I think, can say from the outside like what happened there. But like when Nurkic kind of fell off, and you could have seen maybe this was like a lower outcome for him. But also then he, in the process of him, everyone kind of knowing the Suns want to move him, he says, I did not have a relationship with Bud, hadn't talked to him in a while. All that to me just screams, okay, like you don't have that one position nailed down, and your best, most veteran chance of that at least being competent, for whatever reason, is just like off the board. And that alone scared the shit of me, and it tracks when you watch them.
Yeah.
Defense NBA is still this, like, as much as we need elite perimeter guys, you need athletic wings, all teams want those things. I still think the best NBA defenses start center out. Like, it is big out and rim protection out. It still tends to start there. To your point, like, the Suns don't have that. Can Budenholzer even build a system without the high-end talent or at least competent center play?
Yeah, it's weird because you would think schematically, like what Vogel and Bud would be asking those bigs to do, fairly similar in terms of like what their reputations are. I think Vogel has adapted a lot more. We just all thought the Roy Hibbert story was cool 15 years ago, so we kind of cling on to that. But like,
sure,
what he did with Anthony Davis was, that bubble championship run was super modern and experimental. He was guarding Russell Westbrook in one series, switching out to Damian Lillard, and so maybe there's something to be said that actually kind of more open mind maybe did help Nurk at times. Either way, we think of them both as they're going to drop their big into the paint and kind of limit the responsibilities, limit the versatility that they really need out of that spot. And so the fact that Nurk fell off so much from year 1 to year 2, like, I almost have no way but to just look at one, okay, yeah, maybe last year was somewhat of an outlier, but it did happen. And so why didn't it happen again? I think that relationship thing is real. And I mean, you even just see like Nurkic is still talking about the situation now that he's in an irrelevant situation in Charlotte. He just seems to be a guy whose ego really needed to be soothed and petted in order to like get the absolute most out of him. There's nothing like hugely wrong with that. Plenty of guys are like that. But when this whole thing was so fragile and you were such a thin team, you just see that one ingredient gets stripped away, and then you barely even have a team because your defense is too bad for your offense to be at its best, and you're playing these games where the margins are super thin and you're having to win, 125 to 120 to even have a chance, and everything that kind of goes down the line from there. So it feels weird to say about a team that has the amount of talent that the Suns do that one slip could go such a long way, but in a lot of ways it doesn't, because they are so expensive and top heavy. You need these very iffy up and down role players to hit their A+ level. Otherwise it kind of crumbles. So I think that is a huge reason why this season went south, and their replacement, Nick Richards, like, I mean, come on, that was a backup for a team that wasn't going anywhere. How much can you really do? And that's where we are.
I was at the first I don't know if it was actually his first game when he played in Cleveland when the Suns were here on MLK Day.
Yeah, and he sucked in that game.
He was so bad, and I was with my dad, and he was like, "Who is this center on the Suns?" And I then explained to him the whole thing, and he said they give up, like, my dad, no real conception of like what assets are in the NBA anymore. but he just was baffled that was like the best center they could find. And then you see what the center work was at trade deadline, and like maybe to some degree he was, but that's a weird, getting behind that 8 ball is not a good place to be. Brendon, the other role guy that I would look at in this, and it's his salary does not dictate role player status, but it's Bradley Beal. And I would have thought if you got Bud over Vogel, if I would have also bet that Budenholzer got more out of Beal than Vogel did in a way that felt meaningful, I would have probably been somewhat confident in making that calculus if I was James Jones, if I was Matt Ishbia, if I was that decision-making structure in Phoenix. The Beal thing just feels like, I in some ways just feel bad for him at this point, because he's like he's the guy who gets picked at. It's not really his, like, he has a no trade clause. He shouldn't just waive it just because the Suns want to get Jimmy Butler. He has no need to do right by the team in that sense. The heckling thing with his wife was like bizarre and weird. But he's also a guy that's just like, from the basic calculus of he's very expensive, you need to get a lot out of him. It's obviously just not totally work. So what has the Beal thing been like this year? When you're up close, when you're watching him day to day, what has that part of this whole calculus been like?
I think he's another guy that, if you look at the difference between last year and this year, he kind of, I think, needs to feel wanted and motivated. And last season, what he was able to do is he was the main point of attack defender for this team. Might not have been, anybody's ideal option to do that, but he was capable, and that's a nice level of responsibility to have, especially if you are knowing you're going to need to take a back seat to these other two superstars. And I mean, they found a way last year to have him sort of as like a part-time playmaker, and then, sometimes more of a scorer and whatever. And I think he felt pulled in a lot of different directions. I think offensively he didn't feel super comfortable. And then the story coming into training camp is he was like, now that we have Tyus Jones, now that we have Monte Morris, these point guard additions that the Suns made, I'm going to be able to, go back to being Brad or whatever. And to his credit, like he has upped his 3-point volume since coming to Phoenix, back to kind of where it was when he was playing alongside John Wall, actually a little even higher, a career high in both of the past couple seasons. He has, embraced at times being more of that kind of energy and glue guy. I mean, I think part of it is he just is so injured that any kind of continuity or chemistry that he's going to build, not even just with the big three, but with anybody, and even just comfort in that role, and whatever role it is, it's not going to happen. And so that's a big issue for him. But yeah, I think like he is a guy where if you watch him night to night, I think that what he says and what he does is there's a big gap. And like, I don't want to be as much of a hater as Wizards fans are, because you tell me you would have played hard if you were on some of those Washington rosters.
Yeah, that's throwing a rock in a glass house if you're picking on Beal and you're a Wizards fan. It's like, I don't know what he's supposed, like, what was he supposed to do? Like,
I don't know. I mean, lead the league in scoring, like that's pretty good, like so. But I do think the more that I see him, and I think just as a personality fit, you can't have somebody who has to find a reason to go full throttle as your third star type guy in a situation like this, right? And I think the no trade clause and kind of everything that played out, where he gets benched in the middle of all the Jimmy discussions, and then he doesn't waive the no trade clause, and now he's still on the Suns, like, it kind of feels like a little bit of evidence of more of the same, where what do you want then? Because if you watch him, he's not happy with the Suns. I mean, he wasn't last year. He went down in a blaze of fire, fouling out of Game 4 of the first round when they got swept, and yelling at Frank Vogel on his way to the bench. That didn't seem very happy. This year, the dude's getting benched. That's humiliating or whatever for some guys, and like career lows. So I don't know. Like, that does speak to, like, is he just at a point in his career where getting to live in Phoenix is just it? I mean, that no disrespect, like, you got a family, do what you got to do, but that has to say something about where your competitive mindset is, right?
100%. I thought that exact same thing, is that this whole thing, even if Beal is doing what he is contractually allowed to do, which is not go where he doesn't want to go, if any of us are in any situation, I feel like on a basic human level, if we strip this down to like what it is at its core, he's not happy with his teammates, his coaching staff, doesn't like where he works. He also has the benefit of like his salary doesn't change if he gets sent somewhere else. This isn't like Premier League soccer, where like if he was like going from England to like France, he would probably take a pay cut. If he had just been like, yeah, I'll go to the Bulls, I'll play with Billy Donovan and rehab my career there, I still get paid the same amount of money. Taxes may be different, whatever, but he's still making a lot of money and it doesn't change. And he would probably still keep his no trade clause, you would think. That even just like a vibe reset for Bradley Beal, I don't think we have an answer, maybe at least I don't from what I've read, of like why that, even just like a vibe reset for him that got him out of what feels like just like a situation where he's never going to be happy and neither side is going to feel totally comfortable with each other anymore. Like why that wouldn't have been more appealing to him during this whole thing.
In Washington, he had to get a supermax contract and a leadership change in the organization in order to convince him to finally leave what was clearly a bad situation, right? So he had to be kind of ripped away from that almost unwillingly, although obviously he literally had to be willing with the no trade clause. And then here in Phoenix, he's basically doing the same thing where, I mean, okay, maybe the through line is he doesn't like change. He doesn't want to kind of uproot his family, all that sort of stuff. But it's like,
which like
again,
relatable. Get
then
it.
what
I get it.
do you want? You
Yeah,
don't want to
exactly.
be the role player guy with the big three, and you don't want to be the top dog on a rebuilding team. So what's good? So I think that all of that mentally probably doesn't help, but these guys have never been able to fit, and I think a big part of that is that Brad hasn't been able to play like, a Chris Bosh, a Klay Thompson, a Ray Allen, what the level of sacrifice and adjustment that those guys had to make, not just in how many shots they're taking, but how they play basketball. He's never really bought into that for months at a time, let alone either of these full seasons.
Which would have made it fascinating if this never felt like it was on the table, but if the Heat had been willing to do like Butler and a Butler Beal kind of thing, and he had been like, yeah, I'll go to Miami, can't imagine him fitting in Miami either. Like it'd be almost even worse what that culture demands. Like I can't imagine like what we know about Beal that would really appeal to him either. It feels like just like the Bulls were in to some degree when I think about just an easy narrative to sell. It's like I play for my college coach in a big market.
And kind of his hometown team because he's from St. Louis.
St. Louis, yeah.
Most of them are Bulls fans, And I thought that, or I thought Chicago, or Detroit made a lot of sense.
Yeah,
just
I
to
agree.
kind of be like, yeah, I'm the guy to come in and kind of put these dudes, my arm around these dudes and help. I mean, it's done wonders for Tobias Harris, it seems like, so same kind of thing. But
yeah, the whole
I guess not. Maybe they weren't even ever an option. You never know.
Yeah, but the whole Piston structure has been like we have Cade and we have Jaden Ivey and Durant and like just a lot of vets who are just kind of like Tim Hardaway is just like playing hard for us. It's like you landing with JB Bickerstaff in that situation for 2 years you could do worse. You absolutely could do worse. You'd at least probably be happier. I don't understand the Beal thing at all. Congratulations to the Wizards for really just impacting the course of modern NBA history more than anyone could have imagined. Great stuff.
Forget the no trade clause. That contract is
it's insane.
Absolutely insane that ever happened.
We're in Brendon. This is not what we're talking about, but there is something to be said that I think we are in this era where if I was a team, even I think of Brandon Ingram to this degree as well, although he didn't obviously get as much money and there's not the no trade clause. Even when I look at $40 million for Brandon Ingram in this cap environment we're in, I'm like, what is this? I don't understand why teams are still just like giving the max amount of money they have to all the time. It's not good business in this apron environment. And
that might be the Canada tax, though, because I'm not sure other teams are going to anymore.
We'll see.
The Pelicans literally didn't, right?
Yeah,
like they
sure.
got off of that, and
Yeah.
I think you're going to see more and more of it. But yeah, it's
Masai washed. Masai might just not be good anymore. It's also like what I'm just thinking out loud.
Yeah, or
There's
maybe when
something
you
there.
don't draft perfectly like they did for a little while there, it gets a little tougher on you, and you got to overpay. But yeah, I mean, it's Bradley Beal is probably going to be the last of his kind. Let's just say that.
Good for him, at least for generational wealth purposes. So, Brendon, overall, root cause of the season, is it we've hit on the personnel, the whatever? Is it? How do you break it up in
They
terms
don't
of like
play
what,
hard. That's the problem.
So can I?
That's
I'm
what
going to
we
tell
just
you.
have to
okay.
say.
Okay. That when I saw them in Cleveland, I don't know if this is normal for them or whatever, but something that really struck me when I was watching them warm up. Durant and Booker came out with 5 minutes before the game started. Like everyone else came out when I could not remember any other time seeing stars not come out with the rest of the team in that way. It was like this really weird. It was just like, why are they just coming out now? Are they just are they doing rehab in the whatever it was? I'd never seen anything quite like that where there wasn't a unified warm up in that sense. I know every NBA player has a specific protocol and with trainers and things, but that was weird. And then they just didn't. To your point, they did not play hard. But was that an inevitability? Is it a vibes question that has influenced this? Is it what is if you're trying to diagnose this and fix it, if you can, what is the root of the not playing hard thing? Is it all of this? Is it just they know this is a sinking ship? What is the feeling when you watch this team and you're around them on a regular basis?
Yeah, I mean, look, I think all of it plays a part. My way of thinking about it is whether you want to throw, front runner or you want to talk about leadership or whatever, I honestly think a lot of that is just fair to wonder about because it's now 2 full seasons of this and, at different point in all 3 of this Big Three's career, maybe also, some other seasons have felt like this. But, I think you either just have it or you don't, right? In some ways.
Yeah.
At least to really be a difference maker where you're affecting the people around you, not just I handle my business. Because I think you can't necessarily say that Durant or Booker or anyone, even off the Suns, who you might paint this way, they've gotten to this point in their careers. They're working pretty hard, right? We don't have to stoop so low with it, but if you're going to be the type of person a Chris Paul who passed through here, or even a Jake Crowder on more of a role player level who crossed through here, and you're doing that to other people and raising the water level on the team, that you either have that or you do not have that. And I don't think that anyone on this team, any person on this roster has that. And outside of the young guys, but how much are they really going to do? And so that's just hard to solve for. There's not really an easy way to overcome that. Maybe you could just say, oh, we'll talent our way through it. But then if the talent doesn't fit perfectly, then, you just run into all these roadblocks. Really what I think about is that this is a collision between ownership, who sort of is management in Phoenix since Matt Ishbia bought the team 2 years ago, and what management was before that. And it couldn't be more stark because James Jones has his limitations as a GM. He was very young when he got to this position. He has a type. It is not super athletic, not super physically forceful basketball players, but high IQ, high culture factor, and high floor in terms of where their development's at.
Which is what he was. We should just say it's kind of what James Jones was
himself.
First. Yeah,
he likes him some James Jones. And then Matt Ishbia, who is, all in, talent at all costs, literally all costs, and just transaction your way through everything. Keep getting another thing. And I don't think it's a coincidence that there were holes in the Suns' approach before with that athleticism and physical factor. That's why they lost to Dallas in 2022. That's part of why they lost to Denver in 2023. But now it's the complete opposite problem, which is everybody who's here just sort of ended up here. And no thought was put into who's going to be the Jay Crowder. All that stuff that, somebody like Charles Barkley is going to go on Inside the NBA and complain about, and then all the nerds online are going to say, shut up, that doesn't matter. It does, and you see it in teams like this. And I think Matt Ishbia is like the nerds online who just think talent solves it, and maybe James Jones is more of the Charles Barkley. Not a coincidence that he was a former player and Matt Ishbia is a dude who, ran a mortgage company. So I think that that's a huge part of what you're running up. That's not to give too much credit to Durant and Booker and Beal and the players, because ideally you can overcome that by figuring it out together as a group, but that's not happening. And so maybe there was just a cardinal sin of building this way that they're not able to get past.
So what is the path forward, Brendon? When you think about this year, the title hopes not there. Feels like this is sneak into the play-in and just see where that gets you. But it feels like the summer becomes the point of
do you think they're making
reckoning.
a play-in?
Let's look at this. Let's look at this again.
Because I kind of don't. They're 11th right now. Every team ahead of them has an incentive to win. Maybe Dallas falls, but because Anthony Davis is hurt and every center on their team is hurt.
Yes.
But I think the Spurs are also kind of coming.
The Spurs are it out. Yeah. If the Spurs get hot, then I think they become a much more viable playing team. But if they don't catch hot, I could totally see them. Wemby misses a game or two here for maintenance, and they're slow playing a little bit just for another good draft pick crack before you have a full year of Fox under your belt. I could totally see that being a strategic kind of plan there. So there's a window. And as hot as Portland has been of late, I don't think Portland's really gonna make up a run at that. It feels like if you need Dallas to drop and you need the Spurs to kind of slide, because everyone else, even if all these teams have flaws, they feel all kind of solidly play in / maybe can push for higher end of the play in. We're it's 3.5 games between 6 and 10 in the West right now. Mm-hmm. Suns are a little bit behind that pace. They would have to get hot, get some good energy, and have some things break their way. I think I would bet they end up as the 10 seed and then maybe lose that first game. Would be where I guess this ends up.
The Suns are 1-8 against the top 4 teams in the West.
Not bad.
They, in the month of January, they had a cushy schedule and still managed to lose winnable games. Their only good win in the month of January was against the Clippers, who are not anybody's idea of a juggernaut. I guess they also beat the Warriors, but, mileage may vary on how good of a win that is. They beat the Nuggets on Christmas. They have just beaten some of the bad teams. That's how I would put their march through the schedule. They've beaten some of the bad teams. And so I just have no faith that they can make up ground regardless of what else happens, and that's kind of why I'm negative on it. But even, okay, let's just say they make it. They're probably getting no higher than 9th, and track record's not exactly great for the teams to actually jump from the 9-10 game and make the playoffs. And if they get to 10, I believe no team has ever made the playoffs from 10. So it's not looking pretty. It's going to be a formality that they get blown away at some point, I think. And so, yeah, I guess that gets us to the trade stuff. And
yeah, but I would just say hardest schedule the rest of the league. 28 games left. They have Oklahoma City once. They have the Cavs once. They have Boston twice. They have the Knicks once, the Grizzlies twice, and then Nuggets once.
They have this stretch coming up right out of the break with 6 games that are fairly winnable, 2 against New Orleans, and then San Antonio, Chicago, Toronto, with Memphis kind of tucked in there. Depending on if they can dominate that the way they should have, I'll give them a chance. If they're 500 or worse, the season's over.
Yeah, that feels right.
The rest of the way is a complete murderer's row.
So let me ask: if we get to the summer, they're not in the playoffs. The Durant stuff has been, and what his future is, has been the most prevalent thing. But to you, when you observe this and you're thinking about this, what is on the table this summer as far as where they go? What is all on the table in your mind as you think about the next phase of this? Because they obviously cannot just run this back next year. They cannot just do the same thing again. There's going to be change. You would think. So what to you is on the table?
Pretty close to everything. James Jones's job, very much up for grabs.
Yeah.
Especially given that he's been in this kind of hiatus since the ownership bombshell of Robert Sarver being forced to sell and the whole murkiness there. And now Matt Ishbia kind of, is he going to put his own guy in place? Suns fans did not see it as a huge coincidence that Bob Myers went on ESPN and defended Kevin Durant with his whole heart and soul on deadline day after the whole mess happened where they disrespected KD by going behind his back. Maybe it's something like that. Maybe it's just some other retread GM. They're not going to change coaches again for the third straight summer. They're paying Mike Budenholzer a hell of a lot of money, and Frank Vogel still doesn't have a job, so he is cashing those checks from Mr. Ishbia. I just don't think you can pin it on Bud. It's like you've gone up a level with coach each season in theory. There's no higher one to go to unless you're going to get,
unless you're mortgaging more assets for Ty Lue or Spo, which is not a thing that I don't think the Clippers or Heat are doing. It doesn't really move the needle enough. Vogel, by the way, is doing probably the smart thing of cashing his checks. So I believe he's like a consultant for the Mavericks, so he's not technically on a coaching staff. So he's getting those double paychecks and gets to probably work remote. Good stuff from Frank Vogel.
And respect, because this season, as I've said multiple times, vindicates Frank, I think, in a lot of ways. But
it's interesting that the last few times he's been fired, he's been vindicated. Like the Lakers. The Darvin Ham thing vindicated Vogel, and then this is vindicated Vogel. It almost seems like Frank Vogel's a pretty damn good coach. That should probably just get like 5 years to do something.
And he's only 51, so I hope he does get another shot. But
yeah.
So I don't think Bud's going anywhere. They are not going to trade Booker unless he absolutely forces them to do it. I think that his commitment here, it hasn't been tested, I wouldn't say, during the competitive prime of his career, but the fact that he put up with what was legitimate hell for the first 5 years of his career without so much as a peep, and he signed the Supermax despite some, Sarver wasn't really allowed to be there at the time. That speaks to some level of, I know it's Supermax, you don't really say no to it, but I buy. He's under contract for the longest. Even if NBA history tells us these guys tend to get frustrated, I don't think we're quite there yet. It could change, but I think he sticks around, and it's more of resetting around the rest of his prime versus an absolutely complete teardown. That's my thought.
Yeah, I that just seems the likeliest, and even if you're Phoenix, unless Booker makes it absolute hell, you don't trade a guy like that, right? Even if it's 2 years in a row of an all-star team, that is to me one of the best 10 to 15 guys in the league. That is a guy I'd want to build around the next 5 years. That is a guy that the stuff he did with Team USA in the summer and his adaptability there told me something about him. And Brendon, frankly, podcasting with you and hearing you talk about Beal and what makes him great, it's that sold me on Beal. You did a really good job, I think, of explaining over time what makes that guy special. You can't just dump that guy. You also are going to be positioned this summer where it's if you oversell too early, you're almost not helping yourself reset. If a hard reset comes, it's never going to be clean and it's going to take forever. But you already kind of feel like a Durant trade is coming this summer. Maybe it's Houston, whatever it is. Something is coming there.
Yeah.
If you end up being in a position where it's Beal, it's Booker and Durant, and you also just have the Bradley Beal thing hanging around you, you're not going to be in a strong position to really maximize trading both those guys at once to get the most you can. Because some of the teams that would want Durant, I would imagine, are also Booker teams. So how does the salary work? How does the asset management work for these teams? That would be such a complicated thing where I feel the middle ground that I still would feel squeamish about, just because I don't know how much it is raising you in a year, but it's a 2-3 year process still. What is the biggest haul you can get for Durant? Can we get some picks back? Can we find just some competent role guys at our weak spots on the cheap and try to just be more competitive next year, and pray to God maybe you can find somewhere Bradley Beal would want to go this summer and get you back functional salary, even if it doesn't make you, even if you're not getting a star back, if you're not getting Jimmy Butler back, can you turn Beal's contract into functional salary? Because look, in the summer, it is just less time on his deal, and that theoretically should make it a little bit more palatable for another team you're calling on.
Yeah, it'll be a 1+1 for him after this summer. Booker has 3 years after this one, and he's only 28, just to kind of hammer the nail of what we were saying.
Unless you're the Dallas Mavericks trading Luka Doncic, teams don't trade that guy. That literally just does not happen. You don't trade a guy at his age with the time left on his contract.
Well, and you said being more competitive next year. That's one of the good things if you're just sort of selling a reset to the fan base is this season has gone so poorly that even just Booker plus role players, you could imagine a world where the record is maybe a little better. And it feels like it doesn't feel in the moment next season like such a disappointment, even though you are kind of blowing up the logical endpoint of this, finals contender era that started in the bubble in 2020. But the other thing you mentioned, and this might be like a little heady in the CBA world, but it is interesting to me, which is that
it's necessary. It's necessary right now.
Yeah.
I don't think we've it's just NBA teams are thinking about these things as it's not as fun to talk about in terms of like 2King trades. But the cap mechanics and like the Excel spreadsheetness of NBA trades has never mattered more. It has never been a more important factor in how teams are doing business. I firmly believe that.
So that point is the rules of, a lot of the good teams are over one of the aprons or both or very close. And the good teams are who's going to want Booker or Durant. But let's even just say Durant or whatever. Yeah. Let's even say Beal. They make so much money that the typical, if just to kind of tie a bow around why you probably can't even blow it up, is you would get too many functional players back.
Yeah.
You would get too many vets and guys who actually play. And so the Suns are sitting in this situation where Houston has their pick in 2025 and in 2027. They acquired those from Brooklyn last year and then started telling everybody in the world that they wanted these two players.
Yeah.
Which I guess is how we do things now. You can just say that, and that's cool if you do it through somebody who works at ESPN.
We are, Brendon, the more and more, you and I were on this from like a business perspective, but we are in the European soccer transfer window of NBA trades. Like it is literally just becoming Europe where 6 months before a team wants to do something, you get a report that they want to do something. Like we are just there now.
Yeah.
It is fully just open.
But now we're at this situation where it makes sense for the Suns to very, very strongly consider that, especially because back then it was like this hypothetical thing. Now their pick, very well, if things go the way we just kind of mapped out, could be a lottery pick. And, so it's going to become very appealing if the Rockets have an interest in Kevin Durant to have that pick be one of the centerpieces of a trade. Houston also is an appealing partner because they have Fred VanVleet's salary, which is like one that you could take in where VanVleet's not such an albatross in terms of usage. He's not going to get in the way too much as far as how he plays basketball. And he's only he only has 1 year after this. So that, his contract, that pick, and fill in the blanks with some young guys, like you're starting to get to what it would look like to tread water next season. Then you have the idea of if you do get your pick, you're getting a lottery player potentially. You have this pick at the end of the first round that they stupidly acquired. They should not have done that trade, but they did. They split their future pick into 3, so they have an extra one to throw around. All of that, I think, is where you start to add up and look at, then what do we do to incentivize somebody to take on Bradley Beal? Find a place he would be willing to go. I guess good weather and somewhat competitive are his I don't know, but not Miami. I guess somehow, I don't know. And see if you can offload him with, maybe that late first round pick that they have this upcoming year and, something else. I don't know. See if you can get him off and then go into next year with much more of a flexible cap sheet, a decent enough roster, younger, but not totally non-competitive where you could still push for the play-in, push for a 6 seed, and Booker's still only 28, and ideally maybe by the time he's 30, you could start to be hoping you're knocking on the door of contention again. I think that's the best case scenario, but the Suns will still be over the second apron with all of this. They will still be pissing everybody off as everybody, who's plugged in around the NBA tells us Matt Ishbia does to everyone. He seems to be absolutely insufferable to deal with. Are teams going to do them a favor to help them tear down this experiment? I don't know. And I think we've seen that teams aren't exactly in a hurry to save the second apron teams from themselves, right?
No.
And so I think that'll be another element of it. But that's what I think. I think you're probably headed toward getting rid of Durant because not only is that the only kind of button you can push here, but they really did him dirty, right? I mean, is that just me? Like I think
No,
that
they
they
did him
absolutely
dirty.
fucked him on that.
Yeah, and if I was him, I would be pissed. If I was Kevin Durant,
He found out from the Warriors, from his buddies in Golden State, that his
Yeah.
team was trying to get rid of him. That's crazy.
Yeah, if I were him, I would look. I am more in the pro Durant like camp, considering like he gets like I think like looked at as a very mercurial kind of guy, and I don't think people always have the most like favorable opinion of Durant as a human. I almost think in some ways he's the most like human NBA player we have because he just like we get his reactions to things in a very non-filtered way, and also like he's had these things happen that are just the most like human frustrating things you could have happen to you, and like finding out from your guys from a place frankly you didn't really want to even go to even after all of this. You didn't want to go back to. And even that, you go back to the Achilles thing, is probably, I would guess, at the root of that, or at least part of that. Probably also the Draymond part of it. Like, I would be pissed off if I was him. And I don't know, especially if you're pairing that with how much time does he have left to compete for another title. It's kind of just like, okay, like, can I do this here? No. It's maybe just time to go be a nomad again and get somewhere else.
Yeah, but I think one of the things will be as we get closer to that is dude is a legend. He is aging better than most in the history of the league.
Yeah.
I don't think he can be the number one option on a team that's winning a championship. He can't be the sole number one guy the way that maybe he was in Oklahoma City or even in Brooklyn, frankly. And so Houston, they might like him. Ime Udoka is their coach who was an assistant in Brooklyn at the time that KD was there, and that's part of why that connection has been made. But I don't know if I was advising their management, I'm not sure I would tell them to make that trade if they're kind of doing their one move to get from fun regular season team to championship contender. So whichever team ends up making that risk, I hope for his sake that it's somebody that can insulate him probably even a little better than Houston. Even if from a Suns standpoint, I kind of like the Houston idea.
Dallas is the one that almost like clicks to me, is like just all the 32 to 36-year-old superstars team.
Yeah. And he loves Kyrie. I mean, I think that could work. I think, AD defensively, KD doesn't have to do as much. We obviously know him and Kyrie play well off of one another.
They will all miss 25 games a year.
Bring me Derek Lively is all I can say to that.
Yeah, kind of was surprised by the way the Lakers couldn't have finagled could they the 2031 first and throw that in there and just be like, we're already giving you AD. Can we have Derek Lively?
Yeah, you got your center.
Like
well, no,
I was
then
like,
AD would start talking about how he doesn't want to play.
Yeah, but they have Daniel Gafford. It's like you had another center. You can keep Maxi Kleber, okay? And we'll take Lively.
How much do you think Durant's worth? Like relative to what they gave up for him, which was 4 firsts and a swap, Jay Crowder, Cam Johnson, Mikal Bridges. That was the trade. How much does he get you this summer with? But obviously the elephant in the room being he didn't sign an extension with the Suns last year. He only has 1 year of his contract left this upcoming. Once the team acquiring him this summer, he'll be a 1-year deal effectively, unless they can extend him, and they can't know for sure, I guess. What is that worth?
I think it's a little bit of the Suns thing where it's like, what is the demand? Like, who is the team that is like, we absolutely just have to do this, and we'll give 2 firsts or 2 firsts and a protected first, some second, like and salary, right? Like, I think you're gonna not get as much back as you gave, which I think is they have to know. But if you can get a couple picks, I think it just depends on the teams that come calling. And I think there is potentially a market for teams that will feel a need to do something like this. Houston has been telegraphing they're going to want to do something like this for months now, so you put them on the list. I think Dallas, again, would be a team I would throw out there. I'm still waiting for the Grizzlies just to really go for something really bold like this.
Well, and they were reportedly in. They were
and he doesn't want.
And
he doesn't want to go there.
On KD, yeah.
And he doesn't want to go there. But do you just do it and say like, we'll risk it. We'll bet you're going to show up. I would never rule that out in theory. And then I look at the Bucks. I'm not saying that is like the most that's not a good trade package you're getting back. But that's a team.
I don't think they can do it.
No, but I'm just thinking about teams that would be willing to just give you the world, and you go around the other teams. It's like, okay, or that's not a trade that makes sense for Orlando. The Hawks thing, them being interested, weirded me out because I almost feel like they're more likely to go the other way, and they get a weird offer from the Jazz and trade Trey there this summer. I'm just waiting for that more than I'm waiting for them to say we're trading for Kevin Durant.
Yeah, I think Heat fans still feel like Durant. They could revisit that in the summer.
Wouldn't hate that
And
either.
I don't know if they're wrong, but if I'm the Suns, it's like, is Hawkes and Ware and some picks like enough as far as the replenishment? Maybe, but it's not as good as what I think some teams could offer.
Yeah, maybe there's the Clippers make a swerve back the other way. I don't know. Something will happen. This is the thing. My rule now with NBA trades, Brendan, is that something will happen, and it'll probably be the thing we're not thinking is possible until it happens. Like I'm just kind of assuming we're in the air.
What made you open your mind?
Well,
Is
it's
it
not
maybe what happened in Dallas. I mean,
it's that, and it just feels like every trade we've gotten in the last couple of years, just kind of like 2 days before it happens, is the first time we hear about it. Like the Donovan Mitchell thing was like Knicks for months, and then like one day Ian Begley's like the Cavs have had interest in Donovan Mitchell, and like a week later he's on the Cavs.
is Durant right now the biggest fish of the summer? From what we know.
If we're saying Booker is off the table, because Booker to me would be bigger.
For now, he is.
Let's think about this. I don't think this is the Giannis trade summer yet. I don't think we're.
We'll see what happens in the playoffs, right? Like that all is yet to be figured out.
That would be the one where I'm like, okay, that's probably bigger. But let's just say he's not on the table. I'm looking through like the bad teams. Fox would have been not in terms of prestige, but age wise would have been big. I think KD. I'd still have KD over Trae Young. There's barring something unexpected.
Kind of is, right?
I think he is. Like I don't unless someone. Like unless like the Boston thing gets like let's say they lose in the Eastern Conference Finals and say like we have to like reset our salary now and Jaylen Brown's in the market. That's like the other one I would think about.
Or maybe Zion, if they push that button.
I just don't. I'm done investing in Zion being like a
it's a whole can of worms. But I would think he probably has similar value to Durant. I don't know.
Yeah, it's gonna be interesting. You're gonna get a lot of fun podcasts out of it this summer, I'm sure.
Fun, yeah. That's one word you could use.
That's good. All right, we'll end on this, Brendan. Hype you up. We'll end with some. We'll do a Tankathon Simmons we've been doing at the very end of the show just to get a fake draft order and just wonder who's going to get Cooper Flag. But I'm going to give you a minute, 2 minutes just to be happy for a second. How scale 1 to 10, how excited are you for this Satou Sabally era of the Phoenix Mercury?
I mean, it's the Sabally era. It's also the Clea Copper and Alyssa Thomas era. I mean, it's a good summer. It's a good summer out in Phoenix in that case. It is, and I will be happy to watch the Mercury this year. But it is also like I have to admit the way that this Suns season and seasons have gone makes me a little nervous about what they're doing here because it's very, very familiar. Let's trade everything to get 3 players and hope it works kind of mentality. But I think. Yeah, it's exciting. The league is in a place where if you just have positional versatility and basically don't have a traditional center, you just have a leg up on everybody else, and they finally have that now with Alyssa Thomas, who is like a point center and, allows them to play more 4-out, 5-out stuff. And so this felt like the logical thing. Based on they brought a bunch of NBA people in and they want to kind of modernize how the game is played, and they did not have the roster to do it last year. Now they do, and they have 2 of the most fun. Well, I guess Clea Copper's not super young anymore, but Satou is 26 and the latest to demand to leave the Dallas Wings, and we are happy to have her here where she will love the next 15 years of her career.
That Paige Beckers doesn't want to go to the Dallas Wings, therefore she's gonna put the Storm like news hit is gonna be a wild day on WNBA social media, I think.
Yeah, I think it's a lock. We'll see, but
yeah, it feels like
history tells us it's a pretty good bet unless your name rhymes with Larique, then you're probably gonna want.
Yeah, it's like them and like it's gonna be like Enrique and like JC Sheldon and just like a lot of people who don't want to be there. It's like really it now. It's tough. It's not what you want.
Sucks to be a Dallas basketball fan.
Yeah, I gotta be honest with you. I already probably need to like be in a straitjacket sometimes. If I was a Mavericks Wings fan, on top of let's say like a Cowboys fan, I would be just checking myself into care. I think.
Got that Rangers World Series over my Diamondbacks a couple years ago. I guess that
Yes.
gives you something. I don't know.
Yeah, and like if you're also like a Longhorns fan, then you get Arch Manning in the fall at least. But
There you
the
go.
Luka,
There you go.
the Luka thing on its own would have like as it seemed to have done to many Mavericks fans who lost their mind on like 9 different fronts, including like sparking like a ESPN versus independent media like beef over podcasts. It was a wild time. All right, Tankathon spin. Here we go. Brendon, here's the top 5 draft order that we got via the spin. And I got to tell you, I hate the number 1 pick in this case. I hate it. This is my least favorite outcome. No, it's the Utah freaking Jazz, who I just don't think deserve nice things right now. It goes Utah, then Philly goes up 4 spots. Portland goes up 6 spots to 3. Toronto at 4, and the Wizards at 5.
Oh man, Washington.
Philly doesn't.
Break.
The top 2 don't deserve it. Is just what I'm gonna say there. Just reacting to this, and I
Philly
the Jazz,
looking into another generational player would be very undeserved and rightly mocked. I'll say that among NBA
Would you
fans.
do
like them just having this catastrophe of a season
Yeah.
and mismanaging every step of it, and then
All
we'll
time
just get
new-
Ace Bailey now or whatever. Yeah,
all-time news dump of like Joel Embiid, like Super Bowl weekend. Joel Embiid says he might need to have knee surgery. Just incredible timing dump on their part to do that work. That was some good stuff by them. If Daryl Morey calls James Jones or Matt Ishbia, whoever's making the decision, if they're like another future pick and salary for Durant, would you do it? The salary is the tricky part because it probably like almost has to be Paul George, and I don't want the
And
Paul.
so
I need
then
the end. You're
maybe
hanging up the But if you could do it without Paul George, I'd be like, I'll take Ace Bailey, even if it's like him and Booker is not exactly like necessarily clean.
Yeah, depending on how that Embiid surgery goes, I'm going to be anxiously thinking about the possibility of a KD Embiid swap all summer until it either does or does not happen. Put it that way.
But I got to tell you, for your mental health, that's the last thing you need. I think.
I'm not interested. Yeah.
Okay.
If
just
Ishbia were to ask, crowdsource opinions, I would let him know to say no. But
yeah, it's tough.
he doesn't.
Yeah, which is maybe the problem. Meant to text you this when it happened too, but he was at that Cavs Suns game in Cleveland, which was also like Dan Gilbert's birthday, and I'm like, what? This is about you guys are at you guys have a long-standing feud, and you show up. I know it's like NBA networks go to games and stuff, but it's like you came to the game of your biggest rival when your team is floundering. It's like it's just weird energy here. Manishbia.
I think
why are you
men
here?
need to just stop
Go to
with the
therapy,
pettiness. That would be my 2 cents on that. It's like you guys are both wealthy beyond your wildest dreams. You don't even actually know each other that well. Maybe move on, but
Yeah,
I guess not.
Hash it out at like a Michigan State Spartans game and celebrate Tom Izzo together or something. Come together to like save Michigan State football from themselves is like probably the thing you could find common ground over, and yet here we are.
No, because they want their name on all the facilities, and then you get into that mess. So
Yeah, it's tough. All right, we're gonna end there, Brennan. It's been good to have you back on. Thanks for coming through. Give everyone the plugs of where they can find you.
at Brendon Kleen 14 on social media. Awful announcing we do a podcast. We write stuff. I write stuff on the website and Locked On Suns.
Check all of it out. Back later this week. TBD guest. But we're going to do top 10 NBA players to watch. Some interesting NBA players for the stretch run episode while Wes is out of the country for a couple weeks, probably just hopefully drinking and sleeping and doing nothing else as he recovers from the Jimmy Butler saga of covering that. But back later this week, more just basketball. Shout out to BetMGM, shout out to eBay, and shout out to Homage for the support. Thanks everyone tuning in. Thanks to Brennan. See y'all soon.